Welcome back, Sebastian here. So time for my preview for the 2024 Italian Grand Prix. This is of course one of my favorite circuits, so it's definitely a weekend I'm looking forward to quite a bit. So we're starting the preview off with a look at last year's Grand Prix. So of course won by Max Verstappen, second place was Sergio Perez, and Carlos Sainz rounded out the podium for Ferrari. Some notable moments I wrote down from last year's race. You of course had that battle at the start of the Grand Prix between Verstappen and Sainz for the lead of the race. You also had Yuki Tsunoda's unfortunate DNS, which led to 2 extra formation laps. So instead of 53 laps, we only had 51 laps on Sunday last year. There was also a collision between Lewis Hamilton and Oscar Piastri, which led to a 5-second penalty for the British driver. And then towards the end of the Grand Prix, you had that very intense fight between Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz for that final spot on the podium. And of course, that was Verstappen's 10th consecutive win, breaking Sebastian Vettel's mark from 2013. For Verstappen, of course, he would then go on to lose the following Grand Prix in Singapore, ending that 10-race streak of dominance. So the track, same as always, it's a circuit at Monza. We should have 53 laps on Sunday. The track length is 5.793 kilometers, and the race lap record is a 1:21.046 set by Rubens Barrichello all the way back in 2004. So that's 20 years ago this year. In terms of average lap speed of said fastest lap, it's a 257 kilometers an hour on average, which means that it is the fastest circuit on the F1 calendar. The track itself, 2 DRS zones, one going down the main straight and one kind of going down one of the back straights leading into Ascari. In terms of your best overtaking opportunities, you really have turn 1 as an option. You can also make an overtake into turns 4 and 5 if you can follow the car ahead closely going through the Curva Grande. Again, if you're quite ambitious, you can also make moves at Ascari, but really along the rest of the track, again with only 11 corners, not really many other spots to make a move. This will be the track on the F1 calendar with the lowest downforce configurations. So you'll see the absolute skinniest rear wings, skinniest front wings, and again, sometimes because of that, because it's such an extreme circuit, the results for this Grand Prix can be a little bit different than other Grand Prix. DRS is also a lot weaker because of the skinny wings. The wings are quite skinny, so when you open that DRS, it makes less of a difference in terms of reducing the amount of drag that the car has, which means that overtaking is quite difficult, and that's also in part because the track is quite narrow. So an old school track, not very, very different to a track like Bahrain or Kota, where on the entry to corners you have very, very wide entries, so it's quite easy to make an overtake at those tracks. And again, a lot of slow corners where getting the exit out of those corners will be very, very important. So protecting the rear tires this weekend is going to be quite crucial to having a good Grand Prix. Taking a look at the schedule for this weekend, I've included F1 and F2, but that being said, Formula 3 is also on the calendar this weekend, and it is the season finale, so that's definitely always one that's interesting to watch, particularly qualifying. Feels like every year there will be some clip of absolute traffic madness in qualifying from the F3 session, and it'll inevitably lead to about half the grid getting grid penalties. But anyway, back to the schedule. So Friday for the afternoon session, the expected weather is 33 degrees and sunny. Very, very low chance of rain throughout this weekend. But for Formula 2 free practice, 11 in the morning, FP1, 1:30 in the afternoon, qualifying for F2, 4 in the afternoon, and then FP2 is at 5 p.m. local time. Moving in Saturday, FP3, 12:30 in the afternoon, sprint race for Formula 2, 2:15 in the afternoon, and then qualifying 4 p.m. And the weather for qualifying, a little bit hot, 33 degrees, mix of sun and clouds. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects track temperature. But again, we're looking at a pretty hot weekend for the Grand Prix this year, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects the tires, how that affects the engines as well. And then for Sunday, F2 feature race, 10:05 in the morning, and then the Grand Prix, 3 p.m. sharp. And for that Grand Prix, the expected weather forecast is 32 degrees, mix of sun and clouds. Again, on top of the engine, lots of heavy braking zones going into turn 1, 2, Ascari, the second chicane as well. Lots of very heavy braking zones, so it could be tough on brakes as well. Tires this weekend: soft C5, medium C4s, hard C3. Soft is 3 tires in the Pirelli range. Generally, this is a track that's not particularly abrasive, and with the lack of high-speed corners, there's not as much energy going into the tires. But with high track temperatures, you could have a lot of thermal degradation as well. So that's definitely something to watch out for. Now, before we finish up with predictions for the podium for this weekend, I'm going to talk about the best and worst qualifiers at this track in terms of percentage of times that they out-qualified their teammates since 2010. So for best 3 drivers, a bit of an interesting one. Pierre Gasly, the location of his only Grand Prix win, he actually has the best mark, 83%. Russell second, 80%, and Sainz third, 75%. When you look at median qualifying gaps for Gasly, just over half a tenth of a second for Russell, 1.3 tenths, and for Sainz, 0.068. So again, just over half a tenth. So the gaps as well at this track, because there are so few corners, generally gaps in qualifying are going to be pretty small. Worst 3 drivers: a couple drivers who have showed up on this side quite often this year, and then 1 driver who has not. So Ocon and Tsunoda tied 33%, but Ocon I put ahead simply because the median qualifying gap's a little bit worse. So for Ocon, plus 0.019, so just over almost 2/200ths of a second, and then for Tsunoda, 1/100th of a second. In third, a bit of a surprising name, you have Lando Norris with only 40%, and that median qualifying gap is 0.125, so just a little bit more than 1/10 of a second. So finishing up this video with some predictions, I think this is going to be quite difficult. We know that McLaren had an absolute barnstormer of a Grand Prix, at least Lando Norris did, last time out in Zandvoort, but this is a very, very different track. This is a track where straight line speed and slow corner acceleration are going to be very, very important. Lack of high-speed corners, so I don't think McLaren will be as strong. I think, let's see, we're going to go with, for predictions, I'm going to go with a bit of a strange one. I'm going to go with Russell for the win. I feel like he's been performing quite well recently, and again, he's been quite good in qualifying. This is a track where qualifying's been very, very important, and he did, of course, win the Belgian Grand Prix on track, which in these 2 tracks are considered to be quite similar. Number 2, I think I'm going to have to go with Max Verstappen, simply because he's generally, even this last 2-month stretch where he hasn't been winning Grand Prix, he's generally still been good enough and consistent enough that he's getting on the podium every single weekend. And then third, I think that's a tough one. I'm going to go with Lando Norris. He was on very good form last time in Zandvoort. We'll see if he can replicate that form here at the Italian Grand Prix. Again, a track where he hasn't historically done so well, which is part of the reason why I'm not predicting him for the win. The other reason as well is that the McLaren generally haven't been as good at these kinds of tracks. So again, it'll be interesting to see. But there you go. There's my predictions for the weekend. Russell win, Verstappen second, and Norris third. So there you go. Thank you very much for watching my preview of the Italian Grand Prix. Really looking forward to the weekend ahead. And again, this will be the last weekend with this kind of temporary board, and I'll be back to my usual setup for the qualifying F2 Grand Prix videos, etc. later in the weekend. Anyway, thank you so much again for watching. Goodbye.